Ford people probably had people listening to this program and sitting there laughing about it. Listen to them idiots. They're worried about it. No.
We've had a lot of unfortunate races this year, I feel like, that have cost us points, but I still feel like we're in contention.
Fans have shown that they want the bam, 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 knock them.
And I think
you never know when you're just going to have an off weekend.
I've kind of gotten the ability to have the platform that I want, and it is my platform, and I can speak to whatever I feel like talking about.
We were in the mix, and it makes it a lot more fun when you're in the mix than you are just struggling and trying to figure out what direction to go.
Yeah, it's tough, and sorry for being bouncy, the roads here.
It's like if you have, the all-you-can-eat buffet every single day of the week, people are going to get tired of it, right? So if it's a special thing, I think people get more excited for it.
Hi, Bo! Raise your hand up so she can see it. There you go.
Truthfully, even as a company, I think it was, very head-scratching why at the beginning all four of us just went instantly straight to the back. We just really struggled.
Welcome on to the Backstretch. I am News 5's Heather Williams, and this week NASCAR heads to the historic Brickyard, and for the first time in 3 years, we are actually going to race on the oval track, on the bricks. Almost all the drivers that I talked to over the last couple of weeks are really excited about the return to the Brickyard. So that's just one of the many topics we're going to talk about with our expert, Chris Carey. We're also going to talk to him about the race last week at Pocono, about the win by Ryan Blaney, and if Penske is now the organization to watch heading into the playoffs. They've certainly got the momentum here going into the break for the Olympics, but can they keep that up and be the team to watch as we head towards the playoffs in now just 5 weeks, 5 races, 7 weeks. We will take 2 weeks off for the Olympic break. My guest this week is William Byron. William Byron is one of 3 drivers tied for the most wins this year in NASCAR, but he's really kind of cooled off as the summer. It's been something that's kind of been a trend for him over the years. He usually gets off to a red hot start, cools off for the summer, picks some momentum up in playoffs. But I'm going to talk to him a little bit about that, about how they can get that momentum back before the playoff starts, because there are a lot of drivers that they're feeling it right now that feel like they're running pretty well. I don't know that the 24 team is one of them, so we'll talk about that. I'm also going to get a question in about his Legos session, because I think that's pretty cool. And then in my final thought, I am going to talk about once again returning to the big track and my thoughts about what the crown jewels of NASCAR might be. All right, let's get rolling. Joining us now is our crew chief, Chris Carey, who is also the crew chief of the number 75 Food Country Truck in the Craftsman Truck Series. Chris, Ryan Blaney wins his 2nd race of the season. As much as we were worried about the Fords early on, they are red hot now. So Penske's won 2 of the last 2 championships. Have they gotten themselves into consideration for a 3rd?
Oh, absolutely. I was just thinking when you said that, I bet the Ford people probably had people listening to this program and sitting there laughing about it. Listen to them idiots. They're worried about it. No, but absolutely, they're in the contention. They're in the mix. They now have all the other teams and companies, looking to say, okay, now we got to beat them. I'll be honest with you, Heather, I'm not surprised. Let's remember who we're talking about here. This is Roger Penske Racing. These people, what's he won, 18 Indy 500s or something like that, and all kind of racing, and racing all over the world. Finding speed in these new cars is very difficult. It's not, you play with a lot smaller box than what the older cars were. But when you got a lot of smart people in the room, it makes it easier to find little bits. It makes it easier to find those needles in those haystacks when you've got a lot of smart people and it can dedicate time to finding little bits. So they've done their homework, and now I think they're like getting set. They're looking at the playoffs. I think they've got all 3 of their drivers in the playoffs. So now they can. Okay, let's focus on just being good, the best we can be when the playoffs start. That's got to be a really relaxing feeling, and that's what they're doing. So Are they as good as they want to be? You know, if the playoffs started tomorrow? No, but they've got some good, you know, some good groundwork now. They're good foundation to start, and they are going to be a force. Don't. Joey Logano and Ryan Blaney are they're top caliber. They're championship caliber drivers, and Austin Cindric is a good driver too. But Blaney and Logano are the two guys they're going to be putting their money on. So don't nobody count them out. They're going to be there. They're going to be slugging and fighting and pitching and everything they can to win those races when the playoffs start, and they're going to be forces to be reckoned with.
NASCAR held a Goodyear tire test at Bristol this week. Now, we all know what happened at Bristol in the spring at the Cup Series, the crazy tire wear, the cording after like 15 to 20 laps. So how much tire wear is too much tire wear for a good race at Bristol?
Well, I think what they had I'll say it this way, what they had at Bristol in the spring was past the aggressive, let's say that, the aggressive needle was past that. But it was in the right direction. It overshot it a little bit. And I think, personally, I think that when they everybody changes tires under caution or whenever it is, you know, and go, I think they need to be able to run, you know, 30 to 35, maybe 40 laps at an aggressive rate, you know, without the drivers really having to baby the tires. But I think they need to know that after about 30, 35, 40 laps, that like, okay, I need to kick my brain in here now and start using my head and start watching my footwork, my brakes and my throttle, about being easy and not burn these things up, because I might have to run maybe another 100 on them, at least another 40 on them or something like that. And if I abuse them 30 laps into a run, 35, 40 laps in a run, when it comes along, I'm 75 laps in, I'm junk, and everybody's passing me on both sides, and I'm history. So I think probably that's something in that vicinity is what they're looking for. And I'm assuming that they're planning on running the same traction compound that they did in the spring.
So what's really interesting is we actually talked to the drivers after the test went on Tuesday, and they said that in the morning they ran the resin, that's what they ran in the spring.
Okay.
And it was still just every bit as awful as it was during the spring, even with the hot temperatures. So in the afternoon they threw the PJ1 on there, and it was kind of what they were looking for. So I think there's a chance that they might run the PJ1. So that was actually going to be my next question for you, which is, what would you like to see? You run that track. Would you rather see nothing? Would you rather see the PJ1? Like
Nothing. I think it's the greatest racetrack there is. And I think if you go in there and I'll put this A, B. A, I would just assume them do nothing, okay, and just let the track be the track. You have the Truck Series, you have the ARCA Series, you have the Xfinity Series, you have the Cup Series. You got a lot of laps running on that thing during the weekend. And by the time the Cup Series comes along, that baby's going to be rubbered in all the way, everything. Now, what I think the track is thinking about the competition, that if that's the case, it's going to be a one-groove racetrack for the Cup race at the top.
Right.
Not at the bottom.
Right.
And their opinion is that, okay, that's not as good a racing as having you know, one on the bottom that somebody's going to go in there and just bam, bam, bam and knock everybody out of the way. I think
the fans have shown that they want the bam, 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 knocking people out of the way.
And I think when I say the track, I'm saying, okay, the track is looking at what's going to satisfy our fans.
Right.
Which, okay, that's why we're selling tickets. To me, I wish from my standpoint, if they're going to put either or on it, I don't know that the resin or the PJ1 is any different really. It sounds like the PJ1 is better off for the drivers, but I wish they would put at least a little bit. If they're going to do it on the bottom, I wish they put just a little bit on the top at least, so that at least you'd have like in the truck race guys and Xfinity race, you'd have a little bit of a passing lane, a little bit of way to pass, and at least pass lap traffic. I think the racing would actually be better, and I think the carnage would be less. So the only thing, from what I heard, I think the reason they went to the resin over the PJ1 in the first place was that the resin would mix better with water in case it rained. You know, it was better, because if you do on PJ1 and it rains, it's a skating rink.
Yeah.
It's a skating rink. It's like oil and water, really oil and water. So I don't know what their thinking is on that. There's a lot of square pegs trying to go in these holes, and trying to fit them all in and look about everything and think about every situation. And maybe they just need to say, you know what, let's don't think about every situation. Let's just do what we think is best, start with it, and do it, and we'll react as we go.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things to sort out, but thankfully, I don't have to do it.
No, me neither.
The NASCAR Cup Series heads back to the Oval at Indianapolis. How much more special is the Brickyard on the Oval, and what can we expect in our first trip to the Oval in the next-gen car?
I think the Oval is just now. I have nothing against road racing. Let me quantify this. I have nothing against road racing. I actually love road racing. The Indianapolis road race is not one of the best, in my opinion. Going to the Oval at Indianapolis, to the real Brickyard, Heather, it's just, to me, it's just one of those special places. And you say, well, NASCAR hasn't been there a whole lot. It's still a very special place because, yes, NASCAR still has history there. I remember, I'm old enough to remember and was part of, a little later on, going to the Brickyard with the Cup Series to start with. And I'm telling you, that was a big deal. Everybody was just like crazy about it. Like even the biggest stars, the Earnhardts and the Pettys and the Waltrips and everybody, Rusty Wallaces were like Jeff Gordons, they were just antsy to get there. And from being on pit road and watching and being there and watching those cars come down the front straightaway and during the Brickyard races, something like 350,000 people inside that place. It was, I'll be honest with you, it was breathtaking. And I just feel like that it's time to go back to the Oval. I think the next-gen cars will be, they'll be probably a little bit difficult, but I'm going to tell you something. I bet you're going to see a really good race, and there's going to be some strategy involved because it's a 2.5-mile racetrack. Okay, it'll take 50-some seconds to go around it, so it's going to be somewhat like Pocono in that respect. They will get strung out a little bit, but when it comes down after those restarts and come down to the end of the race, I think you're going to see a real exciting finish. And there's just going to be a lot of electricity in the air there. Man, it's just it's hard to explain. Thankful, it sounds like they're going to have an actually cooler weekend. That place, man, can be hot. Whew.
Yeah, but what we need is no rain.
No rain, but it looks like the temperatures are going to be, somewhat better, in the 80s, which low 80 is fine. And that'll be where everybody won't be like, just please get me out of here, in that kind of mode. But I think you're going to be looking for some excitement. I'm anxious to watch it and just see how it unfolds. This is another page in history. We're watching it's the first time the next-gen cars, a lot of these drivers have never been there. But a lot of things that happened at the Brickyard race, people like Dale Earnhardt and Jeff Gordon and Dale Jarrett and people like that winning that race. And even back to the very first race, Rick Mast from Virginia was the guy that sat on the pole the first time. That's history. That's history. And I just love it. I think it's man, when you talk about the Brickyard, it's Daytona 500, it's Le Mans, it's just places like that. It's the Masters tournament, it's the Wrigley Field, Lambeau Field, and places like that. It's Gettysburg. It's places that you never want to forget. So we'll see, man. I think it'll be an exciting weekend.
Appreciate you taking the time to join us this week, William.
Yeah, no problem.
So we are coming down to the nitty-gritty in the regular season. You're one of a handful of guys that lead in the number of wins this year, still chasing up that regular season points championship. What do you have to do to get up there with your teammates and Denny and battle for that regular season championship?
Yeah, I mean, we're not really far out of it, honestly. We've had a lot of unfortunate races this year, I feel like, that have cost us points, but I still feel like we're in contention for that regular season championship if we can just string together some good weeks. So going into Indy, going before the break, I'm excited about that race and hopefully acquire a bunch of points there. And then, we'll just have to see how the end of the season, regular season unfolds. And, see if we can jump up the standings a little bit more.
When I first started covering the sport, I used to always hear about like the summer lull and kind of the dog days of summer. It feels like you guys go through a little bit of that. Is it luck? Is it the tracks that we're going to? Is it a little bit of both? Is it just trying to get through the regular season? Like, what do you think has been the issue the last few weeks?
Yeah, I think we're just turning it around now. I feel like a lot of it has to do with strategy and just the fact that a lot of the races in the summertime, you don't really control your own destiny with the way that they unfold with some of the random things that happen with weather and cutting races short and everything like that. So it's just it's difficult because these races aren't as straight up as the races in the spring and fall. And you just have to kind of navigate your way through it. Now, no one is super consistent. I would say Reddick has probably been the most consistent over the past few weeks, but a lot of the guys have had up and down results. So just good to get a couple weeks in a row that have been good results and try to string them together.
This week at Indy, going back to the oval, where do you put Indy in like the hierarchy? Because everybody used to talk about it as a crown jewel, and you started running the road course, and it wasn't so prestigious. Maybe do you like going back to the oval, and where do you kind of put Indy now?
Yeah, I love it. I think it's great that we're back on the oval. That's what we've all wanted as drivers for a little bit now. So yeah, I'm excited about it. I think it's going to have more meaning than it's had in the past few years. So I'm excited for it. I think it'll be fun.
I know you weren't like a huge racer growing up, but were you aware of Indy and the 500 and its place in history? Did you pay attention to any of that?
I always did. Yeah, I always watched the Brickyard 400 because it was in the middle of summertime, and usually I watched all the summer races. So I always watched everything about that weekend. So I remember a lot of those weekends, and then as I got older, I watched the Indy 500 once I kind of understood the importance of that. So, yeah, I definitely watched both.
What do you have to do to win this weekend? What's the key to getting around the oval?
It's just I don't really know. We haven't been there in a couple years, so I think that in practice we just have to do a good job identifying what we need in the car, and then go from there. So yeah, I'm not sure yet, really, but I feel like the biggest thing is going to be just trying to put good laps together in practice to get a good balance read, and then go from there.
Totally non-racing question, but have you worked on any cool Lego things lately?
I haven't lately, but planning on doing or building the F1 car, the Mercedes F1 car. So that's in my bus at the track. So hopefully this weekend I'll have some time to do that.
For my final thought tonight, I'm going 3-2. For my final thought this week, I'm going to talk about the NASCAR crown jewels. What are the 4 crown jewels of the sport? I think everybody can agree that you've got the Daytona 500, the Southern 500, and the Coca-Cola 600. But then what? There's probably 3 races that kind of maybe qualify to be in that next tier. Could be the 4th crown jewel. You've got the Bristol night race, the Talladega spring race, and the Brickyard 400. If you know me, you know I'm pretty partial. I live here in Bristol, so obviously I'm going to say the night race because I just think that there's not an atmosphere that I've been to in the sport that's like it, right? I mean, you feel the pomp and circumstance of the Coke 600 or the Daytona 500, the Southern 500. The night race feels like that for me. Now, granted, I've never been to Indy. I'm a huge IndyCar fan. I think going to the Brickyard would be amazing, but it just feels different when you're under the lights in Bristol. There's so much urgency. It's so compact. The tempers are so elevated. Now with the added incentive of advancing to the next round of the playoffs, that race just seems really special to me in a way that a lot of other races aren't. If you were going to twist my arm, I would say that the only one that could contend to that would be Indy. As I mentioned, have not been to the Brickyard, so I don't know, but there's just something really special about racing on that yard of bricks. Now, with them racing on the road course the last few years, obviously I feel like Bristol fell into that 4th one pretty easily. Going back to the big track, I think it can contend with Bristol for that kind of special racetrack. We'll have to see because a lot of these drivers right now have never raced on the big track at Indy, and nobody has raced on the big track at Indy in this next gen car. So I think today is a big race as far as figuring out what that fourth crown jewel of NASCAR may be. Thanks for joining us on the Backstretch. We'll see you next week.